Well, hello, welcome to the channel. My name is Johnny, and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. And this is going to be part 6 of our diesel tugboat here by Lindberg. And what are we going to do? Well, let's do this. We need to tackle our windows here in our bridge section. And also we'll have to figure out the windows for the portals as well. So, yeah. Let's start with this. Let's jump down on the bench here and see what we got.
So, let us start off with this. Now, no, it's not a speaker. Well, I mean, it was. This is just the packaging for a Bluetooth speaker, but we're not interested in the speaker at the moment. What we're interested in is this clear plastic here. And this is very durable plastic. I'm not sure what it's actually made out of, but I think it might be Lexan, but it's very, very flexible and very tough. So we're going to go ahead and cut off a section of it here. This little wing here that was tucked down inside the box, I think, is going to be the perfect size for us to start making those large windows that goes around the bridge. So we'll cut this off. And I'll just wrap it around the outside here to make sure that, well, that we have enough length. So, yeah, we've got plenty. So we need to start off with a straight edge here for our Lexan. So I'm just going to trim it off here using a steel rule and my hobby knife here. And we'll just trim it off and get us a nice straight edge to start with here. Now with that done, I did cut off one wing of it there, and as you can see, it doesn't really fit the contour there because we got kind of a compound contour going on, and we want our glass to fit nice and snug. So I'm just going to use a piece of masking tape to run it along that little ridge inside there, and that's going to give us a cut line that hopefully will match close enough. That way we can get everything nice and tight. So we're going to start just trimming this off, and we have plenty of length, so that's not an issue. And so as you can see, it does have a slight angle to it because the glass is kind of it's very dimensional. How about that? So that's a pretty decent fit. So I am going to clamp it into place here. We need to check and make sure that everything will go flush. And I will need to trim up the other side of it there, so making sure that it's forced in all the way against that front bulkhead is very, very important there. We don't want any gaps there. And then we can go ahead and trim the other edge. Now, as you can see, because of its complex shape, there is a space there, which means we need to make it conform to the roof section of our bridge here. So we're going to use the same technique again, using the Tamiya masking tape here. I'm just going to push the Tamiya masking tape down very close, well, making contact with the roof section. And this is 6mm tape that I'm using. And that should give us a cut line, because that cut line is not straight. For the top of our windows there. So we need to kind of reproduce this shape, and that tape allows us to do that. So with that done, we can pull the clear piece back out, and as you can see, it has a slight curve to it. So we'll just take our scissors and follow along that line there at the bottom of our masking tape. And that should give us the shape that we need. So with that cut off and we've reinserted, I've taken a black marker there and marked the windows, the very bottom of the windows, which gives us our bottom line there. And with that designated or marked out, we can use that as a guide. And we'll just take our 6mm tape again and place it just under those little black lines there for our windows. And don't worry, that black magic marker will come back off. So with that, we can cut off the bottom edge here because we don't want all that clear plastic sticking out. It's kind of going to be in the way. So we're going to trim it down and follow our masking tape once again. And that'll give us the bottom curve that we need. So we don't need those black lines anymore on our clear parts. So I'm going to use isopropyl alcohol here in a cotton bud, and we can just kind of erase that. And don't worry, the alcohol doesn't affect our clear plastic, so we're in good shape there. And that'll clean right up. So I've got it pushed, I reinserted that clear piece and got it pushed down all the way so that it's making full contact with the roof section. We've got it clamped into place so it doesn't move on us. And we'll take our permanent marker there, and we're marking the very bottom edge of the clear plastic there. So the ideal is here we can put in some polystyrene strips here that will hold the bottom of the window in so it can't slide down. And then it should be just a friction fit, so we won't have to cement this into place. Once we get it popped in there, it probably will be there for good. But we'll still be able to remove it for painting. At least that's the idea. So I have some 1 millimeter wide thin polystyrene strips left over from when we made those ladders in the previous video, which are going to come in really handy here to make that small retainer lip that we need to go underneath of our windows. And I'm just using those self-gripping tweezers to hold this into place. So it's important that the top edge of our strip covers up the mark line. So you got to kind of sight it through the windows there to make sure that you're right on top of the line. And then we can just cement that into place. Now I'm doing this in 2 pieces. It's just easier to do it that way. Once we've got both pieces in, we can go ahead and test fit our clear plastic again. And so we do need to get it popped back into place there, and it is a really tight fit. But it does go in for us. And that's the result. We've got nice windows there. Very nice. Now we can just pop these back out for painting and then put them in during final assembly, and everything will be fine, I hope. So it looks pretty good. So I did do a little bit of experimentation to see what kind of cement we can use to actually glue this stuff in. And the medium CA glue will stick to this stuff where Tamiya Extra Thin doesn't. Unfortunately, though, it kind of changes the molecular structure a little bit and makes it extremely brittle, which it wasn't brittle before. So we're going to make sure that we don't use this on those windows in our bridge, but that should be okay if we're gluing small sections of this to cover up the portals alongside the main structure. Now let's take a little look here at our instructions. As you can see, there is some rigging because the kit did include some black thread for us for this very purpose here, which is the rigging of our mast that's on our tugboat. And if we look at our box, we can see how or at least the location of where they've got those lines attached to the top of the bridge there. And I think probably the best thing for us to do would be to make some eyelets there to kind of facilitate and help us with the rigging there. So we're going to use a piece of copper wire here. Now this is telephone line, household type telephone line, copper wire here. We're just going to go ahead and use our calipers here. And as you can see, it's a 0.50 millimeter. So that's the diameter, and we need to strip off the plastic coating here that's on our wire. So I'm just using a wooden block there and a sharp blade to kind of draw it across the insulation there. And once we get that kind of shaved off down to the copper, we can just take the very end of it there, and if I can get it to pop loose for us, I think I need to use the knife to do that. Yeah, here we go. So there we go, it's popped off. And we can just take and pull that right off the copper wire. Now this wire, as you can see, is not very straight, which we kind of need it to be straight. So I'm just using the side of my tweezers here and pressing it down on my cutting mat. And we're just going to roll it very carefully here. Well, it's not very carefully, but by adding pressure and rolling it, we can actually straighten this copper wire out. And we don't need it perfectly straight because we're going to be bending it a little bit later on. So we just need to get it straight enough to work with. And that looks pretty good. So when I first decided to do this, I chose the smallest bit that was in the drill bit kit that I have. Now that's a number 60 wire gauge bit. And I'm going to use that as a bending mandrel to get the little loop that we need on our eyelet. However, the number 60 is actually too large. It's just shy of a millimeter in diameter, and that's really too big. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to a different drill bit, and these are the little modeling type bits, and I'm just going to use my calipers here. That's a 0.67, so 0.67 millimeter. And I'm going to use that to kind of tighten that eyelet up. That way it's more in scale, a little bit smaller there, but yet it's still large enough for us to either get the rigging line through that came with the kit, or if you want to, you can use like Easy Line or something like that. I'm not sure which one we're going to use when we go to rig this, but it would be nice to have something to attach those lines to. So we're going to make these little eyelets here. And so I've closed that loop up. And I need to get it nice and flat, as straight as I can. With that, there is a little bit of excess there, which we're probably going to need to cut off. Now, speaking for myself, when I go to cut any kind of wire, I always use wire cutters for that. Do not use your sprue cutters because you don't want to ruin their edge. So a good pair of sharp, small wire cutters will work just fine. Here we're just kind of cutting that off right there. And then, of course, we're going to have to take and do a little bit of a bend up next to the loop so that our eyelet looks like we want it to. And, of course, we can close up any gap that we have there. If I can hold it to where it doesn't, it doesn't kind of fall flat on us there. So, as you can see, we do have a lot of excess there, so we need to snap that off. And like I say, just make sure you're not using your sprue cutters for this because that would be bad for it. And there's our first little eyelet. Yeah, so I'm actually going to make seven more of these, so a total of 8. So we want to be careful we don't lose them as we make them. So having a container to put these in will really help. So we need to lay out the top deck up here above the bridge where we want to put these eyelets. Now, the one thing that we need to keep into consideration is that we don't want it to interfere with those railings that we made in the last video, because if we put these little eyelets in the wrong spot, then, you know, it could interfere with that. So just make sure that we're on the inside of where the railings are going to go. And so I'm going to mark forward, you know, using kind of the box as a reference. I do have some reference photographs, but they don't really show much as to how these are attached. So I'm just going to mark it out where I think they need to go to give us the best look and the best appearance, you know, and best functionality and ease, I should say, of attaching the lines to not only the mast but to the deck here. And once we're satisfied with those locations, I'm going to go ahead and use my number 11 hobby knife here with a sharp tip to it. Oftentimes these tips kind of break off, so you want to make sure that when you're making these marks that you're using a pointed blade, not a dull one there. And we're just going to make a little indentation there at the 4 points that we've decided where those eyelets need to go. That way we got a good starting point for our drill bit, so we can drill a hole to accept those eyelets that we made. And with that done, we can go ahead and drill these holes. Now, it doesn't matter if you drill all the way through, I don't think, because you're not going to see the roof, or the inside, or the ceiling, I should say, of the actual bridge section here. So it's not that big of a deal. And matter of fact, it would probably be a good idea to have it go all the way through if you can. That way you can add some extra CA glue and make sure that these eyelets that we put in don't pull out. And since we're doing eyelets, I thought it would be a good idea to have some that would actually, tie down our lifeboat to the top of the bridge here where it is supposed to go. So I'm just using a magic marker here to kind of mark the tops of the those areas where I want those eyelets to go. That way it's easier to see, because white plastic can be very difficult to try to determine exactly where we want to drill a hole. And we want to be as accurately as possible, because we don't want to drill off through the side of this little stanchion or whatever it is there. So by marking it with a black magic marker, we can go ahead and get us a fairly center where we want the actual eyelet to go there. So we can mark those for drilling. And if we're very careful, we won't drill out the side of it, which is would be a good thing, because if we actually do that, we'd have to fix it. And we don't want to fix it, so we need to be careful here and line our bit up as straight as we can to try to drill down the center of it as much as possible there. And with that done, we can go ahead and clean this up. So I'm just going to use that isopropyl alcohol again, which is actually a solvent, actually. And it's good for cleaning wounds, too, just in case you cut yourself while you're doing this. So I'm just going to use a cotton bud here. That'll help remove the pencil marks. And then we can also use it to remove the actual marker that we used. Even though it's a permanent marker, it does clean up very easily off of the polystyrene plastic. So we are going to have to trim the length of our eyelets off a little bit, especially for the life raft there, because I didn't drill those all that deep. So if they are a little bit long, then we need to make sure that we don't have too much of that lower shank sticking out there. I want the eyelets to be down as close to the plastic as possible there. So we will trim those so that they will fit, and then we just get all this laid out so we'll be able to cement them all into place. And now that we have all of our eyelets laid out and in the correct holes, we're going to use this medium strength CA glue here that will help hold the eyelets into place. Now, since we're cementing metal parts onto polystyrene, you really need to use CA glue, because modeling glue will not hold it. So we're just going to go right around with each and every one there. Just kind of dip it into the CA glue there, and then put it back into its locator hole. And push it down and make sure it's aligned, because with medium CA glue we have a little bit of time to make small adjustments with it in case we don't have it lined up exactly like we want to when we drop it in. And that's kind of important there overall, to make everything nice and neat and as straight as we can get it there. And with that done, we have all of our eyelets in place, so we're ready for our rigging, and we have eyelets also to tie down our life raft, and so that looks pretty good. Now, speaking of our life raft, as you can see, it does have some detail molded in, but the top half and the lower half of the molding here doesn't really match. So we do have some areas that we need to take care of. So I think it's probably best that we just go ahead and remove all of these details. There's these straps on the float portion of our raft, as well as what looks like might be ropes, but we're just going to take and remove all that, paying close attention to those areas that get down really close to the floor section of our raft. Now, I'm still not sure that I'm going to leave the floor section in. We might end up just taking that out. I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that. But once we remove the bulk of that stuff, we can go ahead and using a sanding stick. Here I'm using a 180. Kind of remove the rest of it. And then a round sanding stick to get down into those little corners and areas there to get this raft cleaned up, because we'll be adding stuff to it later on. Now our tugboat has what's called fenders. Now this is the bow fender. And in case you don't know, fenders are those things that are on ships and tugboats and what have you to keep from having any damage done when vessels get up against one another or up against docks and piers and stuff like that. And these are the side fenders that hang over the bulwarks on our tug, and they're kind of plain as well. So we kind of need to do something to dress these up a bit. So if we look at some of our reference photos, and there's plenty of reference photos out there, we can see that there are tugboats that have these side fenders that are like big raggedy socks in this case. Well used, I have no doubt. And also if we look at the bow fender there, some of us tore almost completely off. No doubt it needs to be replaced on this particular tugboat. And they come in many different types of fenders. Some of them, in this case, the bow fender is a kind of looks like tires on some sort of bracket. And then as we can see in this photo here, we have tires and then great big blocks of rubber also, or what looks like rubber, strapped to the side of the vessel. So we're going to start off with our bow fender. And I think the best thing to do is we're going to kind of overlay some material onto that bow fender, because the bow fender really looks way too two-dimensional, you know, not much detail there at all. And as you can see here, this cotton bandage here is, well, it's just full of detail. We are not detail poor here, are we? So I'm just going to cut off the very end of it that has that stop weave, which keeps it from unraveling. We'll just trim us off a piece here. And we're going to be using this to make up our bow fender, but the material is quite flimsy. So we're going to use this Niagara spray starch and put a little bit in a cup there, and then we're going to dilute it with about 50% water, just like so, and get that mixed up. And the starch is going to give this a little bit, well, I hope it gives it a little bit of body here. Also, if it's wet, we'll be able to manipulate it a whole lot easier. So by using our starch and water mixture here, we'll let that soak into the this wrapping gauze that we've got. And don't be afraid, just go ahead and soak it down. I'm just using a brush to do this because I really don't want it poured all over our mat. But yeah, we'll get that nice and soaked up. And then we can go back with our brush and start just rolling up the edge of it here. So the ideal here is to be able to create some noodles, some wet noodles, which we're going to use to wrap around and create so a lot of interesting texture. At least I hope it's interesting for our bow fender there. Now, once we get it all rolled up, and yeah, I'm just kind of using the original bow fender for about the diameter that I need. We can just take a sharp pair of scissors here, and we will just trim it off. As you can see here, being careful that I don't really want to be pulling those fibers out. We're just going to cut straight down on it there. And then we can flip it around and we can continue the roll. So when we're done, we should have a nice little gauze noodle that's all wet. So yeah, you can take your fingers and kind of shape it a little bit. So the starch that we're using with the water is going to help stiffen it up so that we can actually work with it and it won't unravel on us just kind of temporarily here. So we'll set these aside and we'll have to make up several noodles. So we'll set these aside and let those dry. So next up, let's go ahead and deal with these side fenders here that hang off of our bulwarks. Now you can see they've molded in some sort of, I think it's supposed to be rope, not sure, doesn't look very good. So we're just going to cut those off and we'll go ahead and sand that down. So what I really want to do is make sure that we get rid of any real sharp edges on these. I think these are supposed to represent blocks of rubber. And in some cases, I did see a couple of examples where they were wooden blocks. But we want these to hang over the bulwarks on our tugboat. So we're going to need a hole to attach a line to actually tie it to our bulwarks. So I'm just going to drill out a hole straight across through the top of it there, where I would like to go ahead and thread some line through there, and we'll just clean up the entry hole and the exit hole there, and just make sure that the hole's big enough to accept whatever string or rope or whatever you're going to use will actually go through it there. Now once our noodles are dry, we can go ahead and attach them. I'm going to be using the medium CA glue for that. And we're just going to cement them right to the actual kit part. And you can kind of see it gives us a pattern there of what we want it to do. And it's, like I say, this part is very, very flat and two-dimensional, so it's not that big of a deal. So we're going to start off with our very first piece here. I almost wanted to say noodle again. But anyway, by trimming off those extra threads, we don't have anything that's going to get in the way later on. Add a little CA glue to it. And we're just going to do this in really small sections at a time. You don't want to get too carried away because you definitely don't want to glue your fingers to the part. So we'll go ahead and put the first section on and get it started there. And we do have to make a turn with it. So by adding just a little bit of CA glue at a time, we can manipulate our gauze here that has that starch in it, which helps us to keep that shape, and we can keep cementing it up and moving around the part there. As you can see, very simple, very easy to do. Actually, this is working out much much easier than I thought it was going to. And all we got to do is keep following basically the pattern that's already on the part and keep coiling our gauze noodles right around this particular part. So the part actually is providing us with the structural rigidity that we're going to need, but we're going to stiffen it up too a little bit later on. Now, since our material here is kind of frayed-like, it's going to make joining them together much easier. So we do need to butt up a couple of pieces here to continue our wrap, and it's just a matter of a little bit of CA glue there and kind of pushing it into one another there. I don't think this is going to be visible, but even if it is, I don't think it's going to be an issue. It's still going to look pretty decent. Definitely going to look a lot better than the kit part. And so we're just going to continue the wrapping there after we get it joined. So we are going to have to terminate this. So we're going to have to cut the material off. And we just want to leave enough to make sure, number one, we got the plastic part covered. And then number two, we've got plenty to kind of wrap around to the inside and secure it. And as you can see there, I'm just checking to make sure that I don't have too much. And then we can just use a little bit of CA glue here. And that will allow us to secure the end of our material. And that way it won't unravel or, you know, come apart on us there. So we'll just press that into place. Hopefully we're not going to cement ourselves to it. And so far, so good. So on the very top of our bow fender here, we need to secure these ends. And we're going to do that the same way as we terminated the last piece. We'll just kind of tuck those under and using a little bit of CA glue there. And we'll just cement those into place there. So I need to be able to mount this in such a way that we can continue the next process. So this is mounting tape, which is sticky on both sides. It's a kind of a foamy tape there. And I've put it on a piece of wood here. And we're just going to stick it right to the inside of our bow fender there. Just like so. And now we can continue on with the rest of the process. And that is using PVA glue here, which is just regular white glue. And we're going to put a little bit in a cup for us here. Now we need to dilute this. So I'm just going to dilute it with regular tap water. I did not use warm or hot water, but I should have, because that would have made the dilution process a little bit easier here. So I just need to mix this up really good to make sure that it's not all clumped up the way it looks right now. So yeah, using warm water will make it dissolve a lot easier there. And this is like a 50-50 mixture here that I'm going to use. And we are just going to take a brush and just brush this on all that gauze. And you can put it on kind of heavy. It doesn't matter. The PVA glue will soak into the fibers, and that will really stiffen these fibers up. And that's going to get rid of any of those little fuzzies, you know, that you got sticking out there that you don't want. And you can push those down with your hand later on after you get it all coated with the PVA glue. And you may want to put a second coat on. So this is just my first coat. And I just want to get everything all soaked up with the PVA glue, and that should really stiffen this up. Now this is going to take a while to dry, which is okay. And when you get down on the sides of our fender here, you can kind of just pull it straight down, kind of like where water would run off in that kind of direction, and leave it a little bit fuzzy and little elements sticking down on the bottom. That's actually going to give us a pretty good look. So that'll work in our favor there.
Okay, so we got a lot done. We got our clear part cut and fitted, and we also put in the strip there to retain the windows in the bridge section there. We also drilled out all the holes for our eyelets there, for all of our tie downs and our stays for our mast and all that stuff. So we got that done. And we did clean up our little raft here. I'm still not sure if I'm going to leave the floor in. I might end up just cutting that out and putting a different floor in it. I don't know. I want to think about that. And we did our side fenders here. Drilled that little hole in it and cut off that extra plastic, which didn't really look good to begin with. So that'll give us an opportunity to put some thread through it and tie it to the bulwarks there on our tug. And we've been working on this, which is our bow fender. Very, very unique. Now it's still wet, and I need to push it down just a little bit. I may put a second coat of the PVA mixture that we got here to stiffen everything up really good. And that PVA glue will also help it take paint. At least I think it will. So by sealing all these fibers, you know, the paint won't soak into it so much and stay more on the surface. And so that's kind of my take on that right there. So that's what we've gotten done. And, oh, next video, that's going to be painting. So you guys stick around for that. So special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because of you guys I keep making these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this one. And if you're new to the channel, I hope I earned your subscription today. And so I guess I will just see you guys next Friday. So you guys have a good one.